We are now recording.
Right.
Good afternoon to all of our friends around the world. It is still technically morning here. It is 11 o'clock in the morning East Coast time. I'm Austin Roos. I'm president of CFAM, the Center for Family and Human Rights. We have been lobbying UN documents now since the summer of 1997. Indeed, the two founders of CFAM, Teresa Bell, Crystal, whom you will remember, and Tom, Tom's name is escaping me, both went to the Cairo conference and then went to the Beijing conference and then came back and raised a bunch of money for CFAM to open up our, Uganda is here, hello Uganda, raised money to open up a full-time office of laymen, the purpose of which is to gain expertise and gain contacts in order to advance the pro-life cause in UN documents. I'll just point out that we were so green in the early days that we didn't even know that there was such a thing as a third committee in the UN General Assembly. We knew that there were negotiating sessions. We didn't know much about them. What we were used to were, the prep comms of Cairo and Beijing, and then the negotiating conferences themselves, but we didn't know the warp and woof of the UN. And that was one of the reasons that CFAM was founded, was in order for pro-lifers to come to an intimate understanding of the UN. So the role of CFAM is to assist governments negotiating documents, A, and B, to tell the wider world about what really goes on at the United Nations, and also what goes on with UN programs around the world. And that's one of the reasons that we're here today. Hello, Southern France. Hello, Ottawa. Hello, Erie, Pennsylvania. Nice to see you. And Patrick McChrystal, will this be recorded? It will be recorded. And it will be put up on our website. We're recording it to the cloud right now. So we are waiting for, we're not gonna wait, we're gonna proceed without the bishop. I'm hoping that Lisa Karenti is reaching out to Bishop Rotich of Kenya. He is going to be our second guest today. We're going to be talking about a couple of papers that Rebecca has written. We have a paper program here at CFAM called Definitions. As you all know, we put out a weekly report called the Friday Facts, which is just news, hard news on something that's going on at the United Nations. And one thing I discovered was that my crack staff were chomping at the bit to go into great public policy detail on the Friday Faxes. And I had to say, no, this is for the everyday reader. And if you want to go into detail, you will have to, do these deeper, I hate this phrase, explainers about UN, these various UN issues. And one of our great authors on this imprint called Definitions has been Rebecca Oas. Rebecca came to CFAM now many years ago, 9 years ago?
8 or 9, yeah.
8 or 9 years ago. Rebecca was a bench scientist at Emory University working on molecular biology. I always get this wrong.
Genetics and molecular biology.
And then had this great call to do pro-life work, and we hired her. And she's done amazing work for CFAM over the years. She knows stuff. She knows the marrow of important UN issues in a way that I don't think anybody in the whole world knows, certainly on our side, on the pro-life side. She is the expert on a whole lot of these things. So she wrote a couple of papers in the last several months, one last fall on Kenya, and one that has yet to be published because we are thinking that rather than CFAM published it, we're approaching this wonderful journal called The New Atlantis, where Rebecca has published before, to publish this paper there, but we can certainly talk about it. And that is about the Gates Foundation and their excursion into, quote, family planning and brushing up against abortion. So why don't we begin with the Gates paper, Rebecca? It's so funny. When I read this paper, I see you trying really hard to be kind to the Gates people. You want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't really know almost that they're naive, but you know that they're not naive. But anyway, this begins at a conference that CFAM attended. Did you go to that conference, or was it you and Lisa, or was it Lisa and Wendy Wright?
It was Lisa and Wendy.
This was in July of 2012, so a long time ago. And it was the beginning of this program of the Gates Foundation. So why don't you explain this particular program of the Gates Foundation, which was inaugurated in 2012?
Sure. So the London Summit on Family Planning, which was held in the summer of 2012, was sort of it was the launch of a big partnership on family planning called FP 2020, or Family Planning 2020. And it was co-sponsored by Melinda Gates of the Gates Foundation and the UK government under then Prime Minister David Cameron. And the idea was to bring together donors and NGOs, non-governmental organizations, governments, philanthropic organizations from around the world to really put family planning on the map, to raise a whole lot of money. And they had an ambitious target to, as they put it, empower 120 million women and girls with access to modern family planning methods. Shortly prior to this, Melinda Gates gave a speech it was a TED Talk in Berlin, where she sort of launched the fact that she wanted family planning to be essentially her signature issue with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which of course, as you know, founded by, Bill Gates, who's the Microsoft founder, and his wife, Melinda. So they're $1 billion organization. And she wanted to really promote family planning, but she emphasized that she wanted this to be a no controversy issue. She really hit that one hard in saying that, the issue of family planning itself should not be controversial. Unfortunately, it is, because people equate it with things like population control and abortion. But what she wanted to do was take out the controversy. And so under the hashtag of no controversy, she just wanted to promote family planning absent those other issues. And so that was, the beginning. And then obviously the London Summit was sort of the culmination of that, where she was bringing a whole lot of other organizations in to try and reach this target of adding all those new users of family planning by the year 2020.
And how many did they want to add?
120 million.
And how did it turn out?
They were well short of their target in their progress reports leading up to 2020. And, essentially at the end of 2019, they had to admit that they were well short of their goal. And of course, the explanation was, we wish we had more funding, and, we set a very, very ambitious target. But of course, they set it for themselves. Nobody else set it for them. So in that sense, they were definitely off of their target.
Now, Melinda Gates said she wanted no controversy, meaning no connection to abortion. Was she successful in that?
Well, I guess it sort of depends on how you look at it. Her aversion to the abortion issue did translate into not directly funding abortion itself. So she was not going to fund that as a part of family planning. Unfortunately, the organizations with whom her organization partnered often are people who do promote abortion, without any concern about the controversy. And she did get some pushback from some of those organizations early on, saying you can't separate these two issues. In her words, this is a movement waiting to happen. Unfortunately for her, there was already a movement that was well and truly happening, and they were happy to take the money and the publicity that the Gates Foundation could give them, but they also were not interested in taking the abortion out of family planning. And so to that extent, the controversy remains.
Let me ask you this. Are there organizations out there that she could have partnered with that did not touch abortion in any way?
There are some organizations that have taken a stance to do only family planning and not abortion. Some particularly faith-based organizations, some Christian organizations that have taken that position. But, within the family planning movement, the dominant discourse has always been that, abortion and family planning are not separable, that these are two parts of the same thing. And so it is not easy to find organizations to partner with who don't take that position if you want to work on family planning.
Let's digress for a second into an issue you know a great deal about, and that is the idea of unmet need. The idea of unmet need is used by family planning advocates to say that there are hundreds of millions of women who, golly, they want to use modern means of contraception, but they just can't get it. Talk about unmet need for just 1 second.
Sure. So the concept of unmet need is several decades old, and it's been described by people within the family planning world as, an invaluable bridge sort of between the population-centric view of family planning versus the women's empowerment side. So, many decades ago, before those big 90s conferences that you talked about in Cairo and Beijing, there was a lot of distrust between those who were interested in reducing fertility as a goal and those who were looking to empower women. And this was a way of kind of bringing those two groups together. The idea of unmet need essentially is it's based on two questions: asking women, do you want to get pregnant in the near future? Yes or no. And are you currently using a method or a modern method of family planning? Yes or no.
And a modern method means?
Well, there's different lists of what that includes. The UN agencies sometimes differ on the specifics of that, but essentially what they're talking about are methods that are not folk methods that have some proven efficacy, in avoiding pregnancy when used.
Pills.
Pills, IUDs,
Yeah.
Injectables, also some modern.
That word injectable really creeps me out. Injectables. It just sounds nasty.
Well, many things are injected, but yes. But also some methods of fertility awareness-based family planning. So, for example, the standard days method, you might have seen the cycle beads. Those are also considered to be modern, even though they are not contraceptive. And that gets to be, another issue. But with regard to
just 1 second, you say that gets to be another issue, and that's the difference between contraception and family planning, because they're not necessarily the same thing, right?
That is true. And where it becomes difficult is when people use them interchangeably.
Yeah.
So for example, family planning includes contraceptive methods, but it also includes some non-contraceptive methods like, the natural or fertility awareness-based methods.
Right.
And so those nuances become very important, certainly if you're talking about, Catholic morality.
So do you think that Melinda Gates actually thought that she could do this program without working with Marie Stopes? International Planned Parenthood
I don't know if that was even considered. I've written a separate paper about, the difficulty of finding partnerships within the world of international family planning where abortion is not a part of it. Certainly an organization like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with its large amount of money, if they had really been intent on moving into that area and staying in that area, I'm sure that organizations would have risen to the challenge. But rather than do that, they chose to partner with the existing leaders in that space who were almost 2-1, promoting abortion as well.
Yeah.
Just to get back very quickly to the unmet need issue, I think the critical thing to remember there is that unmet need does not actually measure whether women have access to family planning or any intent of using it. And when you look at the reasons why women who are classified as having an unmet need are not using family planning, far more often it's things like concern about side effects or moral or religious opposition, or they're not, really motivated to avoid pregnancy, if you go deeper into that. And so only about 5% of women classified as having unmet need in the developing world actually say lack of access is the limiting factor. And that's from the
pardon me, what was that percentage again?
About 5.
About 5%. Well, because one thing that we hear from our friends in the developing world is that the developing world is awash in modern means of contraception. It's not like they can't get it.
Right, or that they don't know about it. The lack of knowledge is even smaller.
Yeah.
And so I would posit that probably a part of why the ambitious goal of adding all those new users was not met is in part due to the fact that the market's already relatively saturated.
Right. One of the interesting things about your paper on the Gates Foundation is you begin by giving Melinda Gates a tremendous amount of benefit of the doubt. But by the end of the paper, there's like this arc in the paper. And by the end, you really have an arched eyebrow with regard to what their intentions were, what their expectations were. And one of my objections in my notes when I was reading the paper is all this benefit of the doubt, because I just assumed that they have known all along that, and that this no controversy thing was mere smokescreen to get past people like us. And I had a much more jaundiced view of them. So I ask you, did you have a jaundiced view in the beginning, or did you really believe that she thought that she could do this without controversy, that is to say, without abortion?
I guess I would say two things. One is that there are certainly organizations with deep pockets that are doing international philanthropy. I would name some like the Packard Foundation or the Buffett Foundation that are unapologetically and very actively promoting abortion and
Right.
not concerned about. So I do think it's important to mention that it could be a lot worse and to give what credit one can where it's due. That said, I don't think that they're this naive. They're smart people. They employ smart people. Um, I think to listen to Melinda Gates speak and read what she's written on the issue, it comes across that her biggest problem with abortion is that it is controversial and that controversy is bad for business.
Right.
And, you know, I don't know what she believes in her heart about this issue, but, certainly in writing this paper, I wanted to contrast the no controversy position, which is really about optics and perceptions, with an idea of a no complicity standard, which would be about drawing a moral line and saying that abortion is a reprehensible thing and those who do it should not be funded.
Right.
And if they were to take that standard, it would be very different because in the end, the money talks.
Right. Right. Um, I don't know when we're going to publish this, friends, because Rebecca is pitching it to the New Atlantis. I hope we can get an answer from them rapidly. Although this paper can wait. It's not like the.
Well,
Stefano, you've come on the line.
I'm sorry.
I thought the bishop was coming on. I'm thinking, but that looks an awful lot like Stefano. So anyway, this paper, the Gates Foundation, No Controversy or No Complicity, question mark, is going to be published somewhere, hopefully in the New Atlantis. If not, then on the pages of CFAM in the coming weeks. We'll probably wait some weeks before we hear from the New Atlantis. The second paper is, and I had hoped that Bishop Rotich from Kenya would be here talking about the incursion of the sexual left into Africa and what is his experience on the ground. I was delighted to see in my very brief research into the bishop is that he was born on my birthday, 1 year after I was born. So we are practically twins. So anyway, so he has not joined, but we can continue the conversation because Rebecca knows an awful lot about this too, specifically about Kenya. And there's a paper on our website that we published last October called Kenya in the Crosshairs, How the Abortion Lobby is Pressuring an African Country from Within and Without. And Kenya has been one of the key battlegrounds in the assault by the sexual left on African countries. Practically the only place in the entire world, and I haven't looked at the numbers in a long time, Rebecca, practically the only place in the entire world used to be sub-Saharan Africa for countries that are above replacement. Do you happen to know offhand what the numbers are now? Are they still above replacement?
I believe they are, yes. And yes, that sub-Saharan Africa is, the outlier, compared to global trends in terms of reducing fertility.
And this is one of the motivating factors for the Great White North in going after Africa, is because they think that there's too many Africans. Is that right?
Well, it has certainly been said that the unofficial motto of the UNFPA is just enough of us, way too many of you. But I mean, I think there's part of it is that, and another part of it, I think, is the idea that because there's a certain rate of contraceptive use and prevalence in the Western world, that if that's lower in Africa, it must be because they don't have access to it, because of course they would want the same things we want.
Right. When I get into debates on social media about the abortion question, and I inevitably bring up the fact that there are more Black babies aborted in New York City every year than are born. First of all, people say that I'm lying. And then when you show them that it's true, they say, how dare you accuse, Black women of killing their children? How dare you? And don't you know that Black women need, modern means of contraception, and that they have the right to choose and all that kind of business. So first they think it's a lie, and then they think it's okay. Um, uh, and so one of the astounding things to me, and this comes through in your paper in spades, is all of the countries in the North who are spending so much time and money targeting African countries to reduce their fertility. It's and this is something that our side has known about for years and talks about, and domestic left-wing groups don't care. Reminds me of Steve Mosher going to China and discovering the one-child policy, and he came back and the feminists didn't care. They didn't care, and they don't care about this either. They think it's a good thing. So talk about the incursion of majority white countries in the North importing what I call sexual colonialism into largely Black Africa, specifically Kenya. Who's doing it?
Well, I mean, certainly there are certain countries like the Netherlands, Denmark, the Nordic countries, more recently Canada, that have become very strong proponents of what they would call sexual and reproductive health and rights all around the world, and in particular, in those regions that are more politically and socially conservative, like in sub-Saharan Africa. I would also, just mention one other thing, that's unique about sub-Saharan Africa is that when, the desired fertility, as demographic, surveys would call it, is also higher there than in the rest of the world. So it's not that they don't know how this happens, or that the large families that are still the norm there is somehow, not intended. But, to get back to your question of, who it is that's promoting this, I mean, the discussion of colonialism, in foreign aid, in development, has become an emerging issue. The idea that we in the West or the North should not be imposing our values on other cultures and other countries has become more of a topic in recent years. And so in some ways, it's gone underground to an increasing extent.
You mean the imperialism?
Yes. The idea that this needs to have a local face, even if the funding comes from somewhere else, has become more prominent. Just to give one example, there's a fund that's co-sponsored, I believe, by, the Netherlands and Denmark, that is called Amplify Change. And its goal is to find these organizations that are promoting, these sexual revolution issues, whether it be abortion or, others, in countries around the world that tend to be more conservative, and to fund those organizations. So again, it's local people. They might be the vanishing minority politically, but they receive a lot of funding from the West. But the people who are receiving it are still local.
I see the same names in your paper over and over again. Denmark, the UK, Sweden. Why is the huge funding stream coming from majority white countries in the North? Do they truly think that they're being altruistic?
Well, for one thing, it's because they have the money to give, right? I mean, these are wealthy countries. I think that, to some extent they do. They think that these are norms that are good for everyone. And of course, these are norms that you have to be a wealthy country to promote in a certain sense, because if you live in a country that is not wealthy, if you yourself are not wealthy, you can see firsthand the toll that, sexual immorality can take on a person's life,
Right.
whether that be diseases, whether that be HIV. You see the devastation that brings. And, if you live in a wealthy society with a very strong social safety net, you can at least buy off some of the consequences of that. Not so if you don't have those things.
Right. They would say that one of the consequences that we ignore is rampant poverty because there are too many children. What do you say to that?
Well, I would say that those people who are being described that way would often say their wealth is in their children,
Mhm.
that having strong family ties is the best safety net.
You quote Ann Kyoko from the Heritage Foundation panel that you participated in, talking specifically about this.
Right. Well, I mean, and she, speaks very eloquently about her own upbringing, in Kenya, and the idea that African women would want to destroy their own children is unthinkable.
Yeah, Rebecca, Lisa had a question. She wants to know how much Gates funding has gone to groups doing abortion since the Gates Foundation is committed to family planning.
So part of the paper that I've written on this involved going back through their publicly available tax information. So every year they submit to the IRS a Form 990, which talks about, basically which grants they make to which organizations for which particular types of projects. And so I was interested to see, how much of that funding, went to groups that promote abortion. And so first I was looking at ones that specifically included family planning, either as the sole topic or as one of several topics. And, over that period of time, over those 8 years from 2012 to 2019, which is the most recent ones available, about 82% of all that family planning type funding went to US-based nonprofits, as opposed to foreign-based nonprofits or for-profit companies or foreign governments or UN agencies. And within that amount of funding that went to US-based nonprofits, about 62% of that, oh, I'm sorry, just a second, I'm pulling up the wrong thing here. 56% of that, the majority, went to NGOs or non-governmental organizations that explicitly promote and or provide abortion. So, the largest part of the largest part, in other words, of that money that is specifically for family planning or family planning mixed with other things went to pro-abortion NGOs. And the ones that were not specifically pro-abortion, that doesn't mean necessarily that they've taken a pro-life stance. It just means that in a cursory search, it wasn't obvious that they're promoting abortion directly.
How successful has the sexual left been in importing their agenda into Kenya specifically?
Well, they have failed so far to get the bill passed that they've been trying a couple of times now, the reproductive health bill that would expand the provision of abortion within the context of their more recently adopted constitution from 2010, which does in it explicitly state that life begins at conception. So there's been some success in stopping these bills from being passed. Certainly the public opinion among Kenyans, among men and women, is very strongly in favor of, not liberalizing abortion. Nevertheless, there are, some organizations that have really made inroads into the Kenyan government, making contacts with their health ministry and such, and even helping fund and offer technical support for the creation of documents put out by their health ministry, such as a patient charter and some other documents like that. And so, it's an interesting dynamic when you see something coming out of their health department that specifically cites, organizations like IPAS or Marie Stopes, who are, very big promoters of abortion, co-writing these documents.
Now, you bring up Marie Stopes. Weren't they banned in Kenya for violating Kenyan law?
So several years ago, they were banned in Zambia, I believe it was, for conducting illegal abortions. They did run into some controversy more recently in Kenya for offering, abortions and other services that fall outside of the bounds of law, or promoting them in ways that their medical and dental board, prohibit. And so basically they were briefly banned from doing any kind of abortion activities. That was then, rescinded, but, they were told they had to basically toe the line and there would be compliance checks. So I don't know to what extent that is happening, but they were put on notice, certainly. And it was pro-life groups who really, complained about this and flagged it to the government.
This is a question you may not be able to answer, but I know that Lisa is on the line. How has the Kenyan government been in these types of negotiations at the UN. Do you know, Rebecca, or should I just look in the comments for Lisa's response?
I think I would defer to Lisa on that as far as the specifics.
Lisa, if you put that in the comments, I'd like to, I mean, maybe we don't want to call out our friends in Kenya, but I'm just curious. Patrick McChrystal is asking, do we have similar information on Tanzania? And I suspect we have not looked at Tanzania.
I have not done as deep of a look at that. So I guess the short answer is I don't have specific information necessarily. But I think Kenya is useful as an example of how this is happening and the particular sort of ways that these organizations, you know, the way that they operate. You know, some of them are much more inclined to work behind the scenes and to form, you know, inroads with like-minded people within the government, within the different ministries, you know, say health or education or you know, gender equality or what have you. Whereas others like Marie Stopes and Planned Parenthood tend to, you know, operate more by doing, you know, pushing the limits of what the law or even violating it outright, you know, and trying to make their progress that way.
I want to let our viewers know that there is a Q&A box at the bottom. I'm happy to, there are people asking questions, I think in chat. Let me see. Would we be able to post a link to, and I cannot pronounce her name, who's our friend from Africa who's very good on this issue, made the documentary.
Uju?
Yeah, Uju. Apparently she wrote an open letter to Melinda Gates. Oh, and somebody's putting it up in comments. So there you have it, if somebody wants to see it. Yes, we know her quite well. So let me see.
You know, actually, speaking of open letters to Melinda Gates, an interesting fact that I would love to share is that when she announced this London summit on family planning, there was an open letter sent to Melinda Gates as well as the Prime Minister of the UK, the co-sponsors of the forum, urging them not to leave abortion out of their family planning work. And this was signed by 21 US-based organizations, nonprofits, you know, specifically saying abortion and family planning are inseparable. Mm-hmm. And so I was interested to see how many of those particular organizations received funding between 2012 and 2019 from the Gates Foundation. And
we know that?
We do, actually. So 13 out of 21, which is 62% of those organizations, received grants from the Gates Foundation with a combined value of close to $1.5 billion. And
I wish that our letters were so effective.
Well, what's interesting too about that is that the grants those organizations received were not only for family planning, but included a lot of other global health categories, including pneumonia, HIV, malaria, vaccine delivery, also things like nutrition, water, sanitation, hygiene, and women's empowerment. So, you know, what's interesting about that is, you know, it really shows how much the abortion issue has metastasized throughout not just global health, but all sorts of international aid. And you realize that, you know, when you fund an organization that is so committed to the abortion agenda that they would write a letter like that to Melinda Gates saying that you can't take abortion out of family planning, you know, if you give them a grant to do sanitation or to do HIV work or whatever it is, even if it's totally unrelated, you know that they will use that funding to expand their reach, expand their footprint, you know, to make inroads in capital, to make contacts in governments, and to lobby for abortion, because that is in their DNA to do. And so you can't just say, I'm not going to fund abortion and that's good enough, really, because you know that the contacts that they make, you know, to do vaccine delivery, for example, are the same contacts they're going to use to promote abortion. And so it really comes down to not just what the project is, but who's doing it.
Yeah, abortion tends to poison everything it touches. Jorge and Anita are asking, do you think that that Melinda Gates wanted to make it non-controversial because she wanted to remove the controversy stigma from abortion as well?
I really don't think so. You know, again, I can get accused of being too easy on them, but I think she genuinely, whether or not she has a huge moral problem with abortion, I think she sees it as too sticky of an issue, you know, and that it went to the extent that it is perceived to be involved in what she's doing, it's going to make it harder to get those things done. And I think she genuinely, and perhaps to some extent naively, thought that by trying to separate these issues out, she could make family planning alone uncontroversial.
It's interesting in these debates, domestically and also internationally, the left always wants to make the abortion debate about contraception. Golly, we're here to talk about abortion, and they say, oh, what you really want to do is eliminate contraception. And the reason is because people love their contraceptives. Here in the United States, it is one of the things that seems to be completely sacrosanct. Abortion is not, because most people don't understand all that much about it. But if they can shift the debate onto contraception, they think that they have a rhetorical win. Do you agree?
Yes, I think that's true. I mean, what's interesting, Melinda Gates in her recent book that she wrote, basically accuses essentially the pro-life movement of getting confused between these two issues, thinking that they are the same,
Yeah.
which, I don't think is at all true. I
No.
think the attempts to muddy the waters between contraception and abortion have not come from the pro-life movement, but rather from the other side.
That's right.
With regard to things like how you define an abortifacient method.
There's that, but it doesn't go any further than that. I mean, I don't know any organization that is campaigning to overturn Griswold and Eisenstadt, for instance. And for those who don't know, those were the two Supreme Court cases that basically said that contraceptives are a constitutional right here in the United States for married couples and for singles. And I don't know any organization that is working on asking the Supreme Court to overturn Griswold and Eisenstadt. Do you?
Not offhand, although I do remember the question of Griswold coming up in the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation hearings.
And that's the point. They do. Like, they want to accuse, potential Supreme Court justices of wanting to overturn the constitutionalization of contraception in Griswold and Eisenstadt. Even though the underlying question, and this is, I'll get briefly into the weeds. I mean, the real question there is a generalized right to privacy and whether that is in the Constitution. That was the ground upon which both of those cases turned. And so questioning whether there's a general right to privacy in the Constitution is different than whether people have a right to contraception or not. Even if Griswold and Eisenstadt were overturned, I can't imagine even a single state outlawing contraception.
Right.
I mean, not a single one. So anyway, there's a long question here from Tim Toysink, and I don't know where Tim is from. Maybe he's from France. He said, your term sexual colonialism is apt. In my bioethics teaching in Kenya, Ethiopia, and other African countries, I use the broader term cultural colonialism because the abortion promotion movement in Africa is often bundled with other life and sexual issues, redefining the family, promotion of homosexual marriage, promotion of transgenderism. All of these things go against the cultural norms of African cultures. Working with communities of faith in these areas of standing up to the sexual left is very important. I appreciate this very helpful discussion tonight, etc. Thank you, Tim. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's more that it's the whole panoply of the sexual agenda of the left. I have a new book coming out March 19th called Under Siege: No Finer Time to Be a Faithful Catholic, in which I propose that this is something of a new faith, a new religion, and that in the United States we have a new established church to promote these dogmas and impose them from the top at the Supreme Court all the way down to 5- and 6-year-old kids in public schools who are being forced to accept the idea that there are more than two genders, that boys can be girls and girls can be boys, that sex is assigned at birth. I mean, these go against the teachings of Catholicism, all forms of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, yet this new faith is being imposed by the state upon kids as young as 5 and 6 years old, and also all sorts of nasty sexual practices. And the gay sex drug PrEP is now being taught to grade schoolers in Fairfax County, Virginia. So yes, it's actually a broad front. And I would also point out, we get accused of, oh, you're just like an old culture warrior. And that all of this stuff is just culture war stuff, and we're bored with it and we want to move on. And I point out that we did not start the culture war. This is a war of aggression by the sexual left upon traditional morality. International Planned Parenthood Federation began way back in 1952. The World Congress of Families did not start until 40 years later. We are late to this fight internationally and even domestically. This is a war of aggression by the sexual left, and therefore ours is a defensive war and therefore is wholly just. What do you say about that, Rebecca?
Great. Yes, absolutely. Well said.
Amen. A woman. I don't know if anybody listening around the world knows what happened in the Congress before the terrible, stupid rioting and vandalizing. But there was a prayer from the well of the House of Representatives where this member of Congress invoked all of these strange gods. And at the end of this prayer said, "Amen," and "a woman."
Well,
And
that's entirely binary and so therefore controversial, but
indeed, indeed. Yeah, it's bigoted and hateful. Let me see if we have anything else. What are some of the most effective strategies you have witnessed in these countries about how the family is supported by government organizations as a countermeasure to the evil intent of the abortion industry?
so obviously I think, speaking as someone working in the United States, in one of the donor countries, in fact, one of the largest, I think it's important here to talk about some of the safeguards that we as donor countries can do that will have a large impact downstream, including, the Mexico City policy, or, as it's now become known, the Protecting Life and Global Health Assistance policy that was reinstated and expanded under President Trump and will probably be rescinded in the next couple of days by President Biden. The US has for more than 40 years had the Helms Amendment in law, which basically blocks funding directly going to abortion. So in some ways that is similar to the standard that the Gates Foundation put in with its no controversy. Basically we're not going to directly fund abortion. Now, to be fair to him, Jesse Helms, the senator whose name is on this amendment, his goal was not to avoid controversy. His goal, as he put it, was to avoid the US becoming the world's biggest exporter of death. So he was definitely more in a no complicity mindset. But at the time, and this was back in the 70s, the family planning budget was the place where this abortion work was coming out of. And so, much has changed in the years since then. And so the Mexico City policy, which was first put into place under President Reagan in the 1980s, basically said, not only will we not fund abortion directly, but if your organization promotes and provides abortions, you will be ineligible for funding under the family planning budget. And then that has been expanded to the entire global health budget by President Trump to reflect the fact that this issue, and the people who promote it have expanded across all of global health and beyond. Indeed, the case could certainly be made, and we as an organization have made it, that it should be expanded still further, to other areas of funding. But this policy has been very effective. Its critics, people who hate this policy and call it the global gag rule, have complained that it has dealt a huge setback to the campaigns to liberalize abortion laws in other countries by cutting off funding to the groups that are doing the most effective work, to do that. And so I think, there are ways that donors, if they are so inclined and want to avoid complicity, can have a huge impact. And, if the Gates Foundation were to apply a standard like that, it would have a huge impact, on the billions of dollars that they send to organizations.
Rebecca, do we have a link to the letter from the 16 organizations to Melinda Gates? Do we have that letter? Can we make it available?
I certainly can. It's 21. I will post that.
Okay. Maybe Lisa or Stefano can post it in the comments before we go off the air here in about 15 minutes. Lisa informs me that Kenya has not taken a pro-life negotiating position at the UN. She feels it's directly related to the specific personnel. in the UN mission. And that's one of the things that we run up against, gosh, since the Cairo conference, is that strong conservative nations will often send squishy delegations to the United Nations for a whole host of reasons. Not the least of which is they want to give their domestic feminists something to do. And so the UN doesn't really matter. And so why don't you go play in the UN sandbox and that's it. One question is, please explain how maternal mortality is being used to promote safe abortion and who is funding the research for this?
Okay. Well, I think a lot of the funding comes from the usual suspects, the governments that are seeking to promote abortion, both in terms of its legality and in terms of its accessibility. So talking about maternal mortality, the way that it is measured, obviously it includes dying in childbirth or as a result of complications of pregnancy or postpartum. So, deaths that are associated with complications to the very natural process of pregnancy and birth. It is also often, written to include deaths that result from complications of induced abortion, which is obviously slightly different because rather than being a complication of a natural process, this is a complication of an intervention that's been taken. And so it's a little bit of an apples to oranges comparison. But insofar as it is included within maternal mortality, in countries where it becomes relatively safe to bear children, you can still see deaths from botched abortions. And so the argument goes that if you want to reduce maternal mortality, you have to, instead of, driving women to seek abortions from unlicensed and unqualified providers, provide them with quote unquote safe abortion. The idea being that the only replacement for an unsafe or, dangerous abortion is a safe abortion, as opposed to, finding what the root causes of, the desire for an abortion is and reaching them where they are, and making maternity not a zero-sum proposition. So, certainly there are a lot of very important efforts going on to reduce maternal mortality and to make it safe for mother and child, to give birth anywhere in the world. And those are very important efforts. Unfortunately, it's very easy for that to get hijacked by those seeking to promote abortion as well.
Years ago, Jean Head from National Right to Life, who had been for many, many years a stalwart among pro-life lobbyists at the UN. She was a delivery room nurse and used to always say that maternal mortality was greatly reduced, fell off a cliff indeed when penicillin was introduced and other medicines that help women who may face troubles in childbirth and pregnancy, and it's not abortion.
Right.
I want to say hello to a couple of friends who are on the line here. Dina Narazzi from Rome, so happy to see you. And also Errol Naidu from South Africa, who wants to know to what extent the South African government is complicit in expanding abortion across the continent of Africa. And I suspect that South Africa was one of the driving forces of the Maputo Protocol. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. What can you say about South Africa, Rebecca?
Well, I would in some ways wish that we had Stefano and Lisa on, to talk about the dynamics within negotiations at the UN. But certainly, I know that South Africa has been sort of an outlier, within Africa and within the African Union. Of course, at the UN, it's always better to be part of a bloc than to stand alone. And the African Union has been very much, holding the line on the life issue when many other voting blocs such as Latin America have become a lot weaker on these things.
Yeah.
And so to that end, the presence of South Africa, which has, by far the most liberal abortion laws and has for the longest time, within that bloc, it's harder to have a unified position that is staunchly pro-life. And so that, sometimes it has been, the voting bloc of the African Union with a few exceptions like South Africa. So
I want to point out that the bishop has not joined us and will not join us because he's having technical difficulties. I'm going to invite him back for another session. Oh, wait, it says Bishop Rotich has raised his hand. Where is he? I'm looking for you. I don't know. I don't understand this hand raising business.
Well, I think it's
Um,
useful if you were to call on someone who can speak, but otherwise the attendees can only speak through the chat.
If I could find him, let me see. Allow to talk. Bishop, you are on the line.
I think you're muted.
Unmute audio.
If
Okay. I'm trying to unmute now, but it's not letting me.
I think he may have to unmute himself.
Let me see. Promote to panelist. I'm promoting you to panelist. Bishop Rotich, is it possible, I'm kidding, unmute. Is it possible that you are muted?
He just disappeared.
Yes, he did. He did.
I think he have to unmute himself, but
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. Let me see if I can pull him back up here. Allow to talk. Unmute. Yeah, I'm allowing you to talk, but I think that you have an unmute button there. Are you there?
Hello,
Yay, you're here. We can hear you.
I can hear Rebecca very well. I hear Austin very well.
we can
We're
hear
so
you.
we're so glad to have you. We're in the waning
thank
minutes
you.
of our program, and I fully intend on having you back, and we will work through the technical issues. But before we are finished, please tell us how things are in your diocese.
Well, thank you very much. From the start, I was listening to those nice presentation by Rebecca and your good questions, Austin. I'm very delighted to join you. I've just arrived in the new diocese and Kericho diocese. I'm about a year now. But my involvement in pro-life is based when I was in Nairobi, and I am in the Commission for Family Life. And the paper that was presented in the Senate by a group of professionals and us, I was involved in.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say, as I join you, that yes, money talks here. And for many years, Kenya is known internationally for many things, for tourism, for the lion and the Maasai, for the good things that we have here, and also the sports people. We have a great number of athletes here. And Kericho is known internationally for tea. We produce tea. And I would like to invite you for a cup of tea one day. The issue here is that Kenya is emerging from a colonial, what we call imperialism for a long time. We are only 50-something years old since independence. And my experience is that we are back to it again. And there is a new war, and that language we hear about contraceptives, abortion, is a language that is talked about by the generals in war. And therefore, the language that is being used all over the world now is against humanity, is against the human dignity. Much as it is housed in our constitution that we protect life, I see the language has changed, and it's coming right from a few people. I think, and I believe, that if there is any provider of massive weapons of destruction, it is him and other families. How do we combat, because it has a comparative approach, how do we combat this flow of money? We having contraceptives right everywhere in the towns in Kenya, Marie stops, we have them, and they glaringly do it even as we see it and as we hear. So I think we need to lay out a strategy in Kenya in order to address this, what we call a diabolic language in our lives, because we are celebrating fertility all through. I come from a very large family of 13 children, same mother. And my father and my parents say, hello? They did tell us that human life we must protect. And children are not bad for the economy. They are not bad for the economy. They bring wealth. And so that is what we are promoting here. In fact, in the diocese now, I am rallying around the young people and also the families, and we are talking about protecting life, and we are waging war against contraceptives, which is being given to us by a destructive culture.
Yeah.
We are interacting with the government, and before Lent, we have topics that we will be discussing. We have one topic is about the family, we are about the youth, about the environment and corruption. As you know, now that I mentioned corruption, corruption for me it starts from the womb, because the contraception and all these what you call abortion is that they want to wage war against life. And therefore, Kenya sees itself as a beneficiary of what we've been given in a disguised way, to think that we are suffering. Africa is not suffering. Kenya is not suffering. We are like birds that God has given us food. So it is not a matter of suffering. So I think the providers of our contraceptives have an agenda to disseminate an agenda in order to kill human beings. Why, I don't know. But I see it very clearly that it is against humanity. And for Africa, fertility is a thing that is celebrated. In fact, Christianity has supported very well, and when we read the gospel, is pro-life. When in fact, I would have invited you for Christmas here. There were many children celebrating at the crib. When they see a baby, they love to hold the child. And then I spoke about it. In fact, every day, the young children who are saluting me at the gate, and they say, Bishop, we need to celebrate Christmas. We want to celebrate life. So we are not against. But now an agenda is being sold in a very subtle way, I would say in a camouflaged way, and the language that is being used suits the government so well that it is so cryptic that it needs a poet perhaps to unwrap the language. So I think we need to empower the people through education, through our schools, and have a formidable, what you call a critical mass of a people who can wage that war. Because the language that is being talked of here is a language that the generals, and I had an experience serving in the military. And when I hear this language, I think it is borrowed from a strategy from Shenzhou, which is being taught in the university, the art of war. And that art of war is being used here because you create a market, what you call demand and supply.
Mm-hmm.
So this market that, so to say, has been created by the so-called sponsors out there and make Africa or Kenya think that we are not able to fight corruption. So in the diocese, I would say we are making efforts and inroads by having discussions on a daily basis with the Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And the family life is thriving very well, and I like it. And I would like to, if I would need another troop to support us. You remember when Jesus Christ was calling for, in the morning when there was a fish, and the disciples said, we have been fishing the whole night. And then when they were directed to, and they had a huge catch of fish. So I think in the diocese, we need that support in order to redirect our thoughts towards pro-life.
You know, Father, one of the things that strikes me about that story from the Bible is that if I had been fishing all night and some joker in the morning said, throw your nets on the other side, I would have told him to jump in a lake, that we've done all we could. I thought
yes,
that
but that
remarkable patience.
is, yes, yes, of course, jumping, but that is another way of looking. But I favor the way that, yes, we have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity to change our direction and our strategy. I think the need for a new strategy to fight against this culture that is anti-life. How do we do it? I would say our discussion tonight and a discussion in the future is to empower and motivate those soldiers, on the foot soldiers, that is in the family, to know how to go against this force. It's diabolic for us. Yeah, I think it is.
Father, question: How has the LGBT agenda been imposed on your people? How powerful is that message?
I was in court. I represented the church in court when there was an attempt by the judiciary, by the groups that are propounding this, to move in the court and have it that Kenya is now promoting this. You should have seen the faces of those young men and women who try to be like girls and boys. When I was being interviewed, I mentioned about that, yes, look at these young people who have come out of our schools. Now they are promoting this because they do not understand. They are being driven by, if there is help, these are the young, the youth. And we would take them through what we call the steps of rehabilitation. There is a therapy in order to make it that they can come out of it. Mm-hmm. But because I think the agenda, it was mentioned by Rebecca, that the use of the judiciary, right from the Supreme Court to the lowest court, by activists, so that it is anchored in law and people will not, what you call, you only have to fight it through the courts. Mm-hmm. So I think there is an attempt to enter into this world by using of the social media. The social media, you see it on the Facebook, you see it now being tweeted, but by a group. So we are drawing people to be alert and conscientization. We are sensitizing the young people to think differently, because truly, even in an African culture, that was something, it is a taboo, but it's being promoted, it's being forced to our cultures. And we are trying our best to speak. Sometimes what we are lacking is the media to make our voices heard. We are sometimes very by the same teams, like media houses. Maybe one or two houses promote this. Maybe when they write our dailies, they would silence this voice. They would silence our voice. And we are going to the judiciary again, and we are hoping in the Court of Appeal, the judges would not be on our favor. We hope. But there is an agenda truly that is being sponsored heavily by the Western world. There is a lot of money, and you know, they wanted to go through the parliament. They want to go through now the divorce system of government, and as you know, we are only this is the second time we are experiencing the devolved government. So they're trying ways and means to influence our policies. Yeah. So I think, and I believe, if we have a concerted effort, perhaps we'll have to enter like the eagle. We must fly high where they will not catch us, and then we can now come down renewed. There must be a strategy really for us to use it, because on a daily basis, they have their foot soldiers and they want to go through the schools. There is what we call now the comprehensive sex education. And it has recorded that many schools, about 15 in the city of Nairobi, were practicing this. And I came into contact with some lay persons somewhere in the city, and they said, could you help us? I'm working for this group. I am supposed to be downloading some material for the young people, so that even if you want to log in, they close you out. So I think the children are being taught right up to the youngest 4 years about issues about comprehensive sexual education, and LGBT is one of those. Yeah. There is an attempt. We had a session in Nairobi in one of the what you call pro-life issues, and we saw one young man who walked in and he said, I have been forced because I feel that I am in what you call encased in a woman's body. So I think there is an attempt to have showcase and people to make a lot of witnesses in the court, and especially by the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, and of course Parliament in some ways. But there is a fight, really. We are trying to get inroads, but we are blocked by these groups who sponsor. And as you say, even when they come, like ICBD 25, they already were in Kenya 3 years ago. They were celebrating in hotels. And so when I-25 last year, that is 2018, they came to Nairobi. So we discussed with the politician, including the president, that yes, this is not the way to go in Kenya. Yeah. And the success stories that you saw in the Senate, the bill, Kehika Kemani bill, was suspended and we throw it out. But who knows? it's going like a spirogyra, maybe. So
I would point out to our viewers and listeners that our friend Sharon Slater from Family Watch International has linked to a video that her group put together about the Nairobi summit from a few years ago, and it's all about the promotion of the abortion agenda and all that mess. Archbishop,
all right.
I want to, before we part, I said this in the beginning when you were not on. We share a birthday, and I'm exactly 1 year older than you.
Hello.
Are you there? Have we lost you again?
Yes, I can get. No, I get you now.
Okay. I was just pointing out that in doing my research about you, I discovered that you are exactly 1 year younger than me. We were born on the same day. Oh, well, I think.
Isn't that good? Isn't that great to celebrate life? Somebody is being born every day. And I'm very happy indeed that a child is born in Africa, a child is born in Europe, wherever in the world, and we look this alike. So we need to celebrate life.
Yes, yes.
So I thank you. And I think one of the conference, if you organize, then we ask people who are celebrating the same birthdays all over the world to come out because they were protected. They came out as young children and now they are adults and they are celebrating life.
Yeah.
So I want to say again, I am very happy to hear that talk and language that we are brothers and sisters.
We have every reason to rejoice. We have been given an amazing task by the good Lord, and that is to be here now when his creation is under attack. So we should be happy about that.
We are here for a purpose.
Yes.
We have a purpose in life. Yes.
So I will thank.
So I think the main thing is, right? Carry on.
I was just wrapping up here. I was because we are running a little bit over. We will have you back to talk in more detail,
Yes.
Bishop Rodich, and we'll work out the technical difficulties. So I thank you for joining us. I thank Rebecca Oas, who is the
yes.
that
Can you hear me
on all of these issues, and I thank all of the people that joined us today. Hello? And we will be back next month with another panel. Thank you all.